don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue, a state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Last stand, and I came to deliver. Been called a Clinton operative, a Russian, and a grifter. By libs, a Washington student debt, proud to be an intern, sucking up to pigs who get a tax cut in the midterms. You cut the ties but never heal the wrist burns. Capitalist shackles wrap and penetrate like ringworms around the necks of those whose deaths will not affect the king's purse or the coffers of the company the king serves, who manufacture mandated tinctures. They're safetied out of hanging from a fixture, half a mile skyward, just dangling from the rafters. My grift is sobbing till I'm cackling with laughter. I guess I would've made a decent actor. I'd be great at crying on command until they cut plus 40 minutes after. When the director waves a hand, it ain't a rap, it's now a legal matter. Honey, my grift is weeping on a mic until I'm hacking up airstrike verses like it's bombs away and batter up. Swinging on these bigots, they keep killing us to fatten up. Kill the switch, eat the rich, I think they're finally fat enough. Grab your knife and fork, the world is yours, just say you've had enough. And if you're comfy, you could go ahead and laugh it up. Tell me how the most important vote I'll ever cast is like the choosing of a bus, in that it might not take you anywhere you want, but no one can deny the fact the bus is now no longer where it was. And that's the kind of progress we should celebrate and trust. Spoken like a kid who never took a bus. Spoken like a piece of shit that used some cash to mask his stink and truly thinks he's one of us. Spoken like a terminally unserious person who equates our cries for rights to mixed up orders from a server. It paints a privileged picture of what you would label urgent if the worst thing you've experienced in life has been the time your waiter accidentally brought a tray of gold flake scallop when you clearly ordered gold flake urchin. And now you're storming out the restaurant and hopping in a Tesla. You got 80 pounds of Tony Fauci merchant.
Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride.
Best to place your bets on weaponizing the identity of every limp progressive claiming grassroots integrity. Policy is a slippery slope for all of its complexity, so flex your brave resistance with this Ilhan Omar NFT. Numbered 1 of 723. Each depicts her valiantly championing a bill before she lays it at a donor's feet. And she can throw her hands up in the air with AOC and say if only Nina Turner could have voted present too, that's why we need another seat. We need some more progressives we elect to only tweet, who live to serve humana and their label of elective slapped on every patient's gravest needs. And every station plays the theme that medical professionals agree on the effectiveness and safety of injections authorized for this emergency. And in purely unrelated news, the profits of the ones who manufacture vaccines just increased by nearly 36 billion with a fucking B. Sometimes it feels like we're the only ones that see. Sometimes it feels like all of us are lost at sea. And every time we think we see an island on the tip of the horizon, it turns out to be another measure making sure we're kept within the watchful eye of murderous authority. And so I guess my grift is crying for the future they denied us, where the people who would buy us are a mockable minority. And we are more than genomes under warranty. And we are more than serfs in constant quarantine. If I had a single breath left, I'd let the chorus scream. I'd announce our leaders claiming none for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me.
Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? We did it. We're back. Hi, everyone. It's me. It's Indy. Oh, you know what? I got to put that doc on. I always got to let you in on the technical stuff before we get started, but we're here. Hi, everyone. Oh, Desert Mantis is over on Odyssey. We're live even over on Instagram tonight. I decided to turn on the INN Instagram. Yes, we actually have one. Instagram.com/indie.network. IndieNews.network. See, I don't even know the name. So rare that we're actually doing something over there. I just figured out the hell with it. I got a few minutes. This is Indie News Now Live. It's Tuesday night. It's me. We are live. We are doing the thing. I've got a huge freaking lineup of stuff this week. I did my first tech tips show on Thursday. I'm super excited about that, and I'm excited about doing it the next time already. I got some really good positive feedback about it, and I appreciate everybody giving me that feedback and letting me know that they enjoyed it or what they wanted to see differently. Somebody said they would like to see me have somebody else on and help fix their stuff. That's something we can certainly do in the future. I've got some ideas, so join me on that journey for sure. We are live everywhere. As you know, we're on YouTube, Rumble. We're on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com. So hi, everybody over on Substack. And then we've got IndieNewsNow.com/live. We're live self-hosted. And of course, we've got Kick and Odyssey and BitChute. Shout out to BitChute. And if you're not over on BitChute, some of the people over there are not necessarily the greatest, but the content over there is not censored. And I'm a big fan of that. Ray Vahi is the CEO of BitChute, and he's actually been really responsive with the network and with people who've been censored. So I'm a big fan of his. We're also live again on Twitch and Kick. We're live over at Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. And again, Go Start is live over on Rumble. And I usually hang out over on Rumble in the mornings. We co-stream AM Wake Up / The Independent Review Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. And I'll be hanging out in chat over on Rumble. So not such a big fan of what Rumble's up to lately. We're going to talk about that probably in the next Tech Tip show. Rumble has been courting the Israel lobby, and some of the ads that are running on Rumble videos are just disgusting Hasbara. And they're all Trumpers and in bed with the Truth Social universe, so they're perfectly fine to play off of fear-mongering about Muslims, which, oh yeah, just so happened to be what Israel's strategy is going to be in order to push people towards Israel, which is really just pushing them away from and fear-mongering against Muslims. That was something that they had already come up with. Before we do that, I do want to ask you to support independent media. Hey, we added a little thing, so now you can actually see me there talking while we're doing this. Those are the ways to support. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. I said before, we're live over at IndieNewsNow.com. There's actually a section to keep the news free, so you can tip us over there over on Stripe. And then over on Substack, IndieMediaToday.com, we're live now. And also at INNNewsletter.com, we're part of Indie News Network, and that's where we put out our weekly newsletter for the network and for everybody, not just my content, but Angel Rivera, the handsome cynic, there he is, who uses the Brave browser. You don't see those. Oh, really? Brave. See, I see them still. That's really strange. I don't know why I'm getting the ads still, even though I'm using Brave. Maybe I turned off the shields for that website. I'm not sure. That's interesting. By the way, I did want to thank Jake Sheen, Shagan. Thank you, Jake Sheen, for a monthly subscription over at IndieMediaToday.com this week. Again, support independent media because we depend completely on you. We don't take sponsorships, and we don't run advertising anywhere. So we're completely dependent on you for funding, and we appreciate you helping us do that. Okay. I have got, again, a huge lineup of stuff. So let's get to it. December 7th is a day that will live in infamy. Actually, December 6th. And it's because it was 2 years to the day that Refaat Alareer was murdered by the IDF after being targeted by by Barry Weiss, of all people, which was weird, but she's, of course, a rabid Zionist, and she decided to put a target on him, and he explicitly said, and we're going to get to that in a second, but I wanted to make note of that. I wanted to read an article written by our friend, The Dissident, INN co-founder and friend of the show. I'm planning on doing another one-on-one with him in the next 6-8 weeks or so. He's covered a ton of stuff lately. So he wanted to write a reminder that 2 years ago today, a Barry Weiss-led smear campaign led to the IDF murder of Refaat Alareer. And we're going to go through this. All right, let me blow it up a little bit so you can read a little better. Exactly 2 years ago, the beloved Palestinian poet, professor, and commentator Refaat Alareer was killed by a targeted IDF strike along with his brother, his brother's son, his sister, and 3 of her children, and a neighbor when his sister's home was attacked. As the Electronic Intifada Indie Media Award honoree documented after his murder, Alareer was best known for his wicked sense of humor, continuing to crack jokes even amid what he called the indescribable terror of relentless Israeli bombing and shelling and the pervasiveness of death. The fact that he continued to speak out, even knowing that Israel was systematically targeting journalists, doctors, and other intellectuals for extermination. And for the fact that he encouraged and nurtured hundreds of young writers in Gaza and inspired writers here as well. When the genocide in Gaza began, Refaat not only exposed Israel's crimes to the world, but also debunked the atrocity propaganda used to justify them. He was one of the first people to call out the Israeli mass rape hoax used to justify the genocide in Gaza, correctly stating that Israel uses rape lies or accusations against native Palestinians to demonize them and justify the Gaza genocide. Again, he said this right away. Refaat was also one of the first people to report on Israel's use of the Hannibal Directive to kill their own people on October 7th, saying, on October 7th, Israeli warplanes target and kill some of their own Israeli captured soldiers as they're transported into Gaza. Quote, this is called the Hannibal Directive, something that was later confirmed by the Israeli newspaper Haaretz and later by then Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, which we covered on How Did We Miss That on INN. Alareer also used dark humor to mock Israel's most cartoonish and absurd propaganda used to demonize Palestinians, such as the ridiculous claim that Hamas baked a baby in an oven, which was, of course, soon debunked by Haaretz as a false claim, not true. There it is. Here's the link. All right. Few false stories feed the deniers, and this is a whole article about it. All right. Alareer mocked the fabricated claim, saying with or without baking powder, which they then used against him, claiming that he was anti-Semitic. Oh, my God. It was a fake fucking video. And he called it. But Barry Weiss, again, the editor of the Free Press and now CBS News and self-described Zionist fanatic, who clearly took issue with Refaat's factual debunkings of Israel's pro-genocide propaganda, took the joke out of context to make it look like he supported baking a baby, which he didn't. He was making fun of Israeli Hasbara. On October 30th, 2023, Weiss took a screen grab of the tweet and wrote, here is Refaat joking about whether or not an Israeli baby burned alive in an oven was cooked with or without baking powder, without mentioning that the atrocity propaganda claim had been fully debunked even by Israeli media. Of course she wouldn't, because she's not a journalist. She's a propagandist. All right. This, again, was found to not be true. This was one of those Zaka bullshit stories. He called it in real time, immediately, and it got him killed. Following this smear, Barry Weiss's followers in the IDF began sending graphic rape and murder threats toward Alareer and his family, saying things like, send me your address, we're going to wipe you out in Gaza. When we get to Gaza, I will personally rape, raw dog your mother, like disgusting stuff. And he showed these tweets. Refaat shared the graphic IDF threats and wrote, "If I get killed by Israeli bombs or my family is harmed, I blame Barry Weiss and her likes. Many maniacal Israeli soldiers are already bombing Gaza. Take these lies and smear seriously and act upon them." And here's some of the DMs he was getting. Gross. Barry Weiss's smear campaign began to spread, with the pro-Zionist British tabloid Daily Mail publishing an article titled, quote, "Palestinian professor previously published by New York Times makes sick joke about claim Hamas baked baby in an oven," that repeated the smear. As journalist Rob Page noted in the Electronic Intifada, even Mayim Bialik, she's disgusting. She wrote that book, a children's book about when the bombs fall. Gross. Again, atrocity, propaganda, whitewashing, murder, and genocide. She joined the pile-on against Refaat in the New York Times. So she then described at the time him as a New York Times writer, falsely implying that he was a regular contributor, which he wasn't, and repeated again the lie about a baby baked in an oven. She said that when finding out that a baby was found in an oven, which it wasn't, he made a joke about whether what they baked it with. That was something he thought was appropriate to do. He made a joke about that. No, he didn't. She never deleted the tweet. She never retracted it. When he was murdered 2 years ago by the IDF, evidence shows that it was a targeted strike against him using her smear campaign as justification. The NGO Euromed Monitor noted that, quote, "Refaat Alareer was killed in his sister's home in Al Sidra neighborhood in Al Daraj area in Gaza City, along with his brother Salah and one of his children, Mohammed, his sister Asma, and 3 of her children, Allah, Yahya, and Mohammed also, and a neighbor. The airstrike surgically targeted, quote unquote, the apartment on the second floor where he was in a 3-story building and not the entire building, indicating the apartment was the target and not possible collateral damage. Again, we know that they were targeting journalists by their cell signals, so again, this isn't much of a surprise. Journalist Richard Silverstein reported that, quote, "A well-informed Israeli security source emailed me this confirmation," quote, "Because of the joke, the war cabinet decided that he is an Amalekite and ordered Shabak and the IDF to find and kill him." Following his murder in April of 2024, Israel killed his daughter, baby grandson, and son-in-law in yet another targeted strike in Gaza City. By the way, these are all war crimes, which killed Shimia Refaat Alareer, her husband Mohammed Abd al-Aziz Siam, and their 3-month-old son Abd al-Rahman. Yeah, his grandson, baby. Because 3 months old, that's justified, right? Fuck Israel. Because he told the truth about the Israeli genocide in Gaza and the propaganda used to justify it, Barry Weiss put a target on his back with a smear campaign that culminated in them doing exactly that, targeting and murdering him, along with several members of his family. Fuck Israel. Support independent media like The Dissident that will call this for what it is. All right. Just heartbreaking. Just taken too soon, unnecessarily. Rest in power. Thank you for your contribution to the world. Like, seriously. Watch some of the videos and the interviews that he did with EI. It's so sad. Like, this guy was peaceful. He was peaceful. And then they invaded his home and they bombed everyone around him and they murdered everyone around him. This guy didn't want to fight. This guy wanted to teach. Okay. Next, we go to IsraelPalestineNews.org, another really good organization, good outlet. That it's another aggregator, but this is all they focus on. Straight up, just Israel Palestine. And they put out a daily update daily going across Gaza and the world and everywhere. Specifically, in this case, I wanted to get to the West Bank. And I've got another story about West Bank as well, but here's Gaza only receiving 16% of the cooking gas that it needs, right? And this is coming out of B'Tselem, right? Then we've got, here we go, occupied West Bank, Jerusalem headlines. First of all, every day, Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem endure dozens of incidents like the ones below at the hands of Israeli soldiers and or settlers. For background on the West Bank, read these two pieces. Again, this will be linked in the Substack after you go to the link at the newsletter, and you'll see the links to every single thing that I'm showing you tonight. So, Israeli soldiers first killed 2 Palestinians in Hebron. All right, they shot and killed 55-year-old and a 20-year-old. Red Crescent said its ambulances were blocked and medics were prevented, of course, from reaching the victims. Israeli forces withheld the body of Rajabi, the 20-year-old. Why? The army alleged that the two carried out a car ramming attempt that lightly injured one soldier, but eyewitnesses and humanitarian groups even disputed this account, describing the killings as a field execution, which we know happen all the time. Since October 2023, Israeli forces and settlers have killed at least 1,000 Palestinians in the West Bank. Again, no Hamas in the West Bank. And around 224 of those are children, meaning under 18. Children. This one was heartbreaking also. Israel orders to uproot hundreds of olive trees. Why? It's just straight cruelty. Hundreds of year-old olive trees uprooted because they want to systematically destroy the way of life, the infrastructure, the agriculture, but it's not genocide, right? That's the textbook definition of genocide. Israeli forces shoot 4 Palestinians near Jerusalem. Soldiers abduct 6 Palestinians in Qalqila and Ramallah. And look at this. This is what look at, he's aiming literally at the cameraman right there. Wow. Bethlehem Mayor Maher Kanawati at the 2025 Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Bethlehem. We are here to stay, to preserve this land, for it has something worth living for, and from it we derive our right to survive. Palestine is the land of messages and our deep roots in history, and it will only happen through our steadfastness and adherence to it. Wherever there is life, freedom, and hope, there will be Palestine. And its story is not symbolic, but an act lived by the ancestors and completed by us, the children. And there's an entire speech. And they lit a tree, a Christmas tree, for the first time in 3 years in Bethlehem. So that's something. I don't know what. All right. And then there's the latest military tech tested in Gaza, wanted by the West, from the Wall Street Journal. Gross. Again, this is a great little summary, long summary daily. But I've got some other stuff that I wanted to bring. Here's another one. Here's the one about the olive trees again. This one, more about West Bank. Now, when you get the attention of World Socialist website, that's doing something, because that's not something that you normally see. Like, they talk about Gaza, they'll talk about Palestinians, but when they're talking about this specifically, Israel tightens its grip on West Bank. And I saw this yesterday, or the other on Sunday. Under the cover of the ethnic cleansing of 2.3 million Palestinians from Gaza, Israel has tightened its grip on West Bank, aimed at incorporating the whole of Palestine into a greater Israel that now encompasses parts of Syria and Lebanon. We talked about that extensively, that it was the plan and that the Greater Israel Project should never be allowed to be happening. and that Israel shouldn't even be recognized as a country by the United Nations at this point. Last week, the IOF mounted its largest military deployment in the West Bank since the supposed ceasefire in Gaza in October, which has killed over 100 people by far, sending in hundreds of soldiers along with armored vehicles to storm the town of Tubas near Nablus. A military spokesman said that a broad counterterrorism operation would continue for several days. The military imposed a curfew on the town, and some neighboring communities closed roads and forced some residents to leave their homes to make way for Israeli soldiers. Where are they supposed to go? Here we go again. This sounds a lot like the forced displacement from Gaza. Get the fuck out. We don't care where. We're taking your house and leave. They're running away from tear gas there. That was on November 28th. The IDF claimed that Tubas had become a haven for terrorism and distributed leaflets threatening, quote, if you do not change this, we will act as we did in Jenin and Tulkarm. Okay, this is a reference to the IDF's assaults on the two cities earlier this year that caused widespread damage and permanently displaced 40,000 Palestinians. The Israeli authorities provided them with no alternative accommodation, nor did they offer any humanitarian assistance while denying them the right to return their homes. So sleep out in the middle of the fucking desert, I guess, is the plan, and starve. According to an IDF statement on Twitter, it aims to, quote, reinforce control over the area, and prevent the reformation of armed resistance groups. Its real purpose is to enable the construction of a new security road and military checkpoint that, as past experience has shown, foreshadow a new Zionist settlement by forcing the residents out of the area. In another move, the IDF is constructing a new 22-kilometer, 50-meter wide separation wall inside the Jordan Valley. That's at least 12 kilometers west of the border with Jordan. This involves, of course, demolishing homes because they don't give a fuck, greenhouses, water systems, and grazing infrastructure, part of the plan. Another site that's come under attack from both settlers and the military is Joseph's Tomb near Nablus, nominally under Palestinian Authority control, with settlers mounting ever larger and more frequent incursions. I'm worried for Issa Amro. This is right where he is. In October, we talked about this last week, the Knesset, Israel's parliament, voted to advance a bill declaring that, quote, the laws, judicial system, administration, and sovereignty of the state of Israel shall apply to all areas of settlement in West Bank, which they again refer to as Judea and Samaria. Israel has already carved up the West Bank to such an extent that movement between the towns and cities is becoming increasingly difficult, if not impossible. Again, part of the plan. While significant and growing number of West Bank Palestinians already live under Israeli sovereignty, albeit without any of the rights of Israeli citizens. Of course they don't. They have to be treated like second class. Right? Because they're not Jewish, I guess. Fuck these guys. Fuck Israel. In September, Prime Minister Benjamin war criminal Netanyahu announced a plan to expand Israeli settlements in the West Bank that would effectively cut the Palestinian territory in half. That's what they did to Gaza. The E1 plan, that's Smotrich's plan, which includes building 7,600 homes in Ma'ale Adumim at a cost of nearly $900 million. They don't care how much it costs. It's our money anyway. What do they care? Would be built over a strategic tract of land separating the northern half of the West Bank from the south. Why? The plan aims to link Jerusalem to the Ma'ale Adumim settlement east of the city on land confiscated from the towns of Anata, Al-Tur, Isawaya, Azariah, Abu Dis. What? The E1 settlements in the center of the West Bank would link Jerusalem with the settlements in the Jordan Valley all the way to the border with Jordan. It basically gives them a fresh road, freshly paved road right through other people's homes to get right to Jerusalem. Boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka. That's like the road out of fucking Mel Brooks. We're off on the road to Judea. That's literally what they're building. These motherfuckers, war criminal, thieves, murderers. They would encircle the central hills of Ramallah and Nablus and the southern regions that include Bethlehem and Hebron. Are you kidding me? Last August, like I said, Smotrich, who controls the West Bank civil administration, that's unreal that he's allowed to have that, the world allows that, said the project would bury the idea of a Palestinian state, calling it Zionism at its best. You mean at its worst, at its most disgustingly evil and murderous and land thieving. He added, quote, the Palestinian state is being erased from the table, not with slogans, but with actions. That's what he's trying to do. He's not being shy about it. Every settlement, every neighborhood, every housing unit is another nail in the coffin of this dangerous idea. There's nothing dangerous about it if you're not trying to steal their land. Murder their kids. Netanyahu, speaking at the approval ceremony in September, said, quote, there will be more cities like Ma'ale Adumim. He then gave notice that he intends to implement the Alon plan drawn up shortly after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, saying, quote, Israel's Eastern Front is not Ma'ale Adumim, but the Jordan Valley, unquote. This means that Israel intends to annex the entire north-south strip of the West Bank that runs alongside the Jordan Valley as the ultimate guarantor of what the Israeli military intelligence describes as the state's strategic depth. They're then going to attack from there into parts of Israel and into parts of Iraq and Saudi Arabia, if you know the way the Greater Israel map lays out. This is their way of establishing more of a strategic depth, a foothold, as you will, so they could then attack even further and steal even more land from even more sovereign countries. That's the plan. Together, the Alon plan and the E1 project would squeeze out the Palestinians. No, it would literally exterminate and genocide the Palestinians, displace them, and put them with nowhere to live, nowhere to sleep, and nowhere to get food. Again, that's the Israeli plan for the Palestinians. Like they've been showing us for 2 fucking years. When's anybody going to wake up and stop this? While successive governments have approved the expansion of settlements that are now home to more than 700,000 Jews in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Netanyahu has vastly expanded the settlements since returning to power in December of 2022. At the head of Israel's most far-right pro-settler coalition, he launched his final solution, where have I heard those words before, of the Palestinian issue in October 23. That sounds a lot like Nazi language about something called the Jewish question. Yeah. The timing of Netanyahu's approval of the E1 settlements, whose construction had been frozen for more than 2 decades amid fierce international opposition because it would end any possibility of a contiguous Palestinian statelet, was no accident. He wanted to drive a knife in the heart of it. It was followed by declarations by a growing number of countries of their intent to recognize a Palestinian state. Of course, an empty gesture which Israel has denounced. We've talked about what an empty gesture that actually is and how meaningless it is, that they're not actually allowing them to have any kind of government or control of anything or have a military or be able to hold Israel accountable for anything it's done. Netanyahu can greenlight the settlements because the U.S. and major European powers have supported him to the hilt as part of their broader efforts to gain control of the resource-rich Middle East and prepare for war against China. This is actually a really, really well-written article and spot on in every way. The UN and the ICJ, of course, have ruled that Israel's settlements in the West Bank are illegal under international law, which they don't give a fuck about. Last year, the ICJ found that the expansion of the settlements was such that Israel had crossed the line into annexation in significant parts of the West Bank. Yeah, they admitted they were doing that, leading it to issue an advisory opinion that Israel had unlawfully annexed parts of the West Bank. But neither the UN nor the ICJ have done anything to ensure the dismantling of the settlements or to prevent their expansion. I don't know what they can do. Would U.S. troops fire on UN troops? We know that Israeli troops will. We know that the ICJ doesn't have any kind of a military enforcement arm that could force them to do that, and that Israel isn't even technically part of the ICJ. Israel's tightening grip on the West Bank has been accompanied by a wave of settler violence against the Palestinians, which also we've been covering. They've gone on the rampage, burning cars, desecrating mosques, wrecking industrial plants, and destroying farmland. According to the UN's humanitarian office, the number of attacks has surged because there's no accountability, with settlers launching around 8 attacks daily on the olive harvest during October, with attacks continuing last month. Not only are they not doing anything about it, but it's literally backed by the IDF. The IDF are standing there specifically making sure that the Palestinians don't respond and retaliate on the settlers. Disgusting. Settlers have injured more than 1,000 Palestinians so far this year, double the rate of last year, and killed 21 people. This is in addition to the at least 1,000 Palestinians killed by the military. According to the UN, settlers have forced at least 2,200 Palestinians from their homes, while the Israeli authorities have demolished the homes of more than 6,000 people. What would happen if somebody went and demolished 6,000 Israeli homes? They've done all this under the protection of the IDF and the police. Wow, somebody just said that before. And with the active encouragement of Israel's far-right coalition government. And the far-right coalition governments of the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and everywhere else. According to a TV Channel 12 project report citing police data, the number of police investigations into settler violence has plummeted since Ben-Gvir took office as National Security Minister at the start of 2023. Again, they don't even report them. They don't respond to them. They don't consider them to be any problem. These few police investigations rarely lead to an indictment or conviction, of course. According to Israeli rights group Yesh Din, fewer than 6% of all investigations into settler violence led to an indictment during the entire 20-year period to 2024. Just 3% of those investigations even led to convictions. And you've got a guy that doesn't want to convict any of these people anyway. Then you've got Mahmoud Abbas of the Fatah-dominated Palestinian Authority, both widely despised by the Palestinians, because he hasn't lifted a finger to oppose any of Israel's expansionist actions. He's also like 89 years old and no power. He does whatever he's told because they're paying his bills. Functioning in his role as Israel's subcontractor in policing the Palestinians, because he is a piece of shit, Abbas has increased his collaboration with Israel and subservience to the U.S. in a bid to consolidate his own and Fatah's grip on power. He mistakenly thinks that whatever's left, he's going to be able to control. The truth is, the sad part is, there's going to be nothing left. And there'll be nothing left of him at that point anyway, I guess is what he's figuring. He'll run the clock out on all this shit. Abbas condemned the October 7th attacks and insisted that he wants an unarmed Palestinian state. His security forces targeted Palestinian fighters resisting Israel, killing more than a dozen Palestinians and arresting hundreds of others, paving the way for the IDF to launch its mass raids on the West Bank's northern cities earlier this year. He shut down Al Jazeera, which was reporting on the siege in Jenin, suspending its operations and accusing it of incitement just months after Israel did so. He's Uncle Ruckus. In February, to appease Tel Aviv and Washington, Abbas canceled benefit payments to the families of Palestinian prisoners and those killed or wounded in Israeli attacks. This action followed a 2018 decision by the U.S. to withdraw financial aid from the Palestinian Authority until such payments ceased. Again, all about the Benjamins, baby. In April, the 90-year-old, he's 90, not 89, the 90-year-old Abbas named Hussein al-Sheikh, a Fatah time server, notorious for his close ties to Israel and widely seen as Israel's choice, as vice president of the PA and his successor. How nice that they don't get elections. They don't get to choose. Last month, al-Sheikh met former UK Minister Tony Blair, whom President Donald Trump has indicated will run Gaza on his behalf, and a U.S. official in Ramallah to discuss Trump's plan for Gaza. Now, we found out today or yesterday that Blair will not be involved. Thank goodness. He's another war criminal who should be nowhere near West Bank, Gaza, anywhere near Palestine. Abbas recently met with Emmanuel Macron in Paris to present the draft of the new constitution and institutional framework for a state of Palestine. Amazing how he gets the right of return, huh? Signaling efforts to establish a reformed PA that, under Donald Trump's peace plan, could eventually qualify to administer Gaza, whatever the fuck that means. Again, there's going to be no Palestinians left to administer in Gaza. He'll be 97 years old at the time. Abbas, of course, has not released the draft. And we have no idea what his vice, although they're friendly to Israel, that's going to be another fucking al-Jalani guy. Abbas insisted during a meeting in Ramallah with German foreign minister, in August, that any elections in Palestine will not include political factions or individuals who do not adhere to the program and commitments made by the PLO and the PA. So he gets to dictate the terms, and of course Israel dictates the terms to him, so it's just he's a proxy for Israel. A few weeks ago, he issued a, quote, decree law. Again, he's 90 fucking years old. Imagine Trump 10 times more senile and 10 years older. That's who they're claiming as their boss. Palestinians hate this guy. A few weeks ago, he issued a decree law imposing these regulations for local elections that will prevent Hamas, the most popular party, from taking part. Again, there is no Hamas in the West Bank organized at all. Hamas, for its part, said it will relinquish its rule in Gaza and it will support an interim administration of Gaza under the PA. They're agreeing to all of it. But release the hostages, right? Oh, right. They already did that. Update your Hasbara talking points, folks. Fuck Israel. This was a really good article from World Socialist website. This was Jean Shaul. Really, really good piece. And fuck Israel for all of that. Every war crime that they've committed. Speaking of which, BetBeat Media, Kareem writes, the world is currently letting Netanyahu decide what happens to his victims while still committing a genocide against them? Unbelievable. He's just walking around doing press conferences and getting podiums while Palestinian children are sleeping in cold tents and under wet blankets, if not being raped by groups of IDF men. That's the reality of what we're living under right now, and we're supposed to act like this is normal. But worse, we talked about Ben Gvir earlier, all right? Convicted terrorist, current architect of mass sexual violence, gang rape, and genocidal torture, walked into the room wearing a noose pin on his suit. Not a metaphor, a literal yellow fucking noose, echoed by the men with him. Yeah, I got a photo. Genocide regalia proudly displayed in government chamber. And he wasn't subtle about the message. Quote, we all came up with the nooses as one of the options for the death of Palestinian prisoners, unquote. There's also the execution platform, the electric chair, the euthanasia. I received 100 requests from doctors who said, just tell me when. And every single one of those should lose their license because, of course, that's not part of the Hippocratic Oath, which is do no harm. This is not policy debate. This is a state rehearsing its fantasies of elimination out loud. While the media fixates on the death penalty bill he's pushing, Wallah quietly reported what the regime is already doing. At least 110 Palestinian prisoners have been executed through torture inside Israeli torture centers. The noose isn't symbolic. It's an admission. A settler colonial regime wherein the iconography of lynching while Palestinians die in its prisons is not extremism. It's the naked face of genocide stripped of euphemism. They're not hiding it. They're accessorizing with it. That's Ben-Gvir. That's him wearing a noose, and his boys all wearing noose pins. Fucking disgusting. These guys belong in prison. And I got more, because fuck Israel. Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur on genocide. So she's kind of an expert in the matter. All right. Listen to this shit. This is coming out of Ryan Rosbiani. I think this might be an Al Jazeera.
I've received threats from all corners. And on top of it, yes, the unilateral coercive measures that make a non-person of me. I cannot exist in the global economy. I cannot have a credit card. I need to borrow money or borrow credit cards, which is not even always possible because not all countries allow you to use a credit card that is not yours. I had a U.S. medical insurance that refused to reimburse me because of the sanctions. But I also had a hotel room booked in my name by the European Parliament, and it was cancelled. It's important that people understand the extent and the great length the United States, Israel, and others would go to silence the voice of justice, the voice of human rights, but they will not succeed. They will not succeed, and it's important that people understand that we are frail and we are weak only if we are isolated.
That's the actual Nobel Prize winner. Forget Maria Corina Machado, whatever the hell her name is. But this woman has been fighting and for the Palestinian people's right to exist for 3 years plus. And they're literally debanking her. She can't have a credit card. A credit card. She's a fucking grown adult with money. No credit card because of the sanctions that they put against her. And then we get into Crazy Townville. All right. Of course, this is not a Voltaire quote. It's a Nazi quote. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you're not allowed to criticize. All right. And literally, it's been used to describe the Israelis because every time you do criticize Israel for murdering Palestinians, you get canceled, you get censored, you get shadow banned, you get everything. Right. But now they're claiming Miss Rachel, of course, is Hamas. So therefore, she's the devil. Oh, my God. But ready for this one? Gen X girl says, I've reached a point where I simply never want to see or interact with these Zionist assholes. They're demented, psychotic, deranged, and genocidal, and they need to shut the fuck up. What are we talking about? Well, our village crazy lady found this wonderful person looking into wondering who's funding Miss Rachel. Lunatics. Ready for this one? Oh, my God.
Now, we know that the only way to really make change is to get to the bottom of who is funding some of these bad actors. Of course, you and I can say, oh my gosh, can you believe about everything we see? Because every day it's whack-a-mole. But that is not going to change what's happening. But Stop Anti-Semitism is going after Miss Rachel. They are going after who is funding her. Because there is no way a children's television personality, like the Mr. Rogers of my time, suddenly becomes obsessed with defending Hamas. It makes no sense unless she's a paid actor. Going after Miss Rachel is a great example of what we need to be doing. They have appealed to Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate who is funding Miss Rachel. It's Qatar, it's Iran, it's funding from bad actors. These people have infiltrated our universities, our newsrooms, the United Nations, and now it is time to figure out who is funding
Qatar.
them. And just today,
That's
Miss
who's
Rachel knows how
infiltrated
high
our
the stakes
fucking
are.
newsrooms.
She's complaining that they are putting her life at risk, which is what she has done to every Jewish person worldwide since she started campaigning for a terrorist regime.
No, you fucking lunatic. No, she's saying to stop murdering Palestinian babies. That's not putting Jews at risk. That's not putting me at risk. And fuck off, you crazy lunatic bitch. Fuck off. Right. The Scent in Bloom. My kids are funding Miss Rachel, lol. Are you fucking kidding me? Who's funding Miss Rachel? Toddlers. Toddlers watching her content are who funds Miss Rachel. Advertisers on YouTube. She's fucking massive. But these people are completely unhinged. Watch them get Miss Rachel demonetized by YouTube because she promotes terrorism. Guess what? That's why this channel has been demonetized specifically for the accusation that we advocate for and promote terrorism. Not that we promote UN-approved self-defense in an occupied territory. Fuck Israel. But I'm sorry to say the Hasbara is far from over, because in their 2026 budget, Israel has a portion, well, Abier writes, roughly $621 million for next year into selling the idea that killing kids and starving babies counts as self-defense. Smotrich and Saar approved from shekels 2.35 billion shekels in a Hasbara budget campaign for influencers in 2026. So if you haven't seen enough of these clowns, get ready. You're going to see a whole lot more. 1 billion shekels already authorized by the government. So that seemed like a lot until I saw Indie Media Award honoree Kyle Anzalone from antiwar.com and the Libertarian Institute. Israel plans to spend $740 million on propaganda in 2026. Again, that's our money. We should cut them off completely and take back everything that we've given them. If they've got enough money to spend $740 million on Hasbara and propaganda, fucking take all that shit back. The plan calls for increasing the propaganda budget to $729 million next year, up from $150 million this year. So 5x. The significant boost to the public diplomacy funds comes as Israel's image is plummeting in the U.S. I can't imagine why. Fuck these guys. So let's buy all the media and have our advocates buy CBS and HBO and Warner Brothers. $106 billion for that. We'll cover that next time because they're still negotiating and they're still fighting over who's going to get to buy Warner Brothers Discovery and how that's going to get whacked up. And it seems like these guys like Skydance is going to get a piece of it. All right. Over the past years, polls have found that a decreasing number of Americans support Israel and approve of Tel Aviv's onslaught on Gaza. Why would they approve of it? It's been more than 2 years since anybody attacked them. Who is attacking the Israelis from Gaza now? Who? How many? Where are they? Haven't they blown up like 90% of the fucking buildings in Gaza? A New York Times survey in September, because you know that they're honest actors, found more Americans sympathize with Palestinians than Israelis. They should. Additionally, 40% of Americans believe Israel is intentionally killing Palestinians in Gaza because the other 60% are fucking morons. Earlier this year, public filings showed that the Israeli Foreign Ministry is spending $4.1 million to target American evangelical Christians. Actually, they're bringing them over to Israel right now on some kind of retreat, more than 1,000 of them, completely on Israel's dime. The campaign will involve creating a mobile October 7th experience. Complete fucking bullshit that will visit Christian colleges, churches, and events. Are they going to have IDF tanks and Apache helicopters to shoot at the fucking cars and houses? I'll bet they won't. Another FARA filing revealed that Tel Aviv is paying some influencers up to $7,000 per post that promotes Israeli narratives. We've known all about that. Israel's planning to spend another $145 million to influence popular AI chatbots. So they're going to flood AI with spam, with slop. Tel Aviv's public relations push also involves bringing Americans to Israel. Again, earlier this year, the IDF gathered 250 state-level American lawmakers for a conference on passing laws that target BDS in the United States. Disgusting that any of that's allowed. How is that allowed? That a foreign country can fully pay for a junket for a sitting congressperson, and that's not considered influence? They all need to be in fucking jail. Every single one. 535 of them. Every single fucking one. Fuck Israel. Okay, rage segment number 1 is over, folks. Thank you. Thank you. That is our fuck Israel segment. All right. I see that $1 million. No, it's $1 billion. $1 million, a drop in the bucket at this point. All right. Stephen Miller looks more like Dr. Evil than Indy probably does. Yes, 100%. I have a big Santa beard and hair, so I would say that he looks a lot more like Dr. Evil than I do. Hilarious. Stop anti-Semitism as the bad actor. Get their funding. They get their funding from Zionists. Absolutely 100%. Thanks for participating, for chatting. Okay. It's nuts. There's a matrix to that question. Yes, the crazy hot matrix. We know. All right. Miss Rachel is my wife. Sean the Accord Lord. Okay. And we're back. Wow, that was weird. Okay. My whole PC froze. That's the first time that's ever happened to me. Okay, just like that. All right. I did replace my internet. So hopefully we're back and we're good to go. So that was perfect that it was right in between segments. I am going to ask you to support independent media. The ways to do that are with Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. I can't take that off the screen now. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. And then we've got website IndieNewsNow.com, like I said, INNNewsletter.com. And then we also have IndieMediaToday.com. Okay, I need to reset that real quick. Let's go, before I do that, go back here. Say hi, everybody. Yeah, that's really weird. I don't know why it's doing that, but let me fix the Sean the Accord Lord, because that's just stuck there right now. And I can't fix it. So let me go here, refresh. Okie doke. Yay. Woo. Yeah, that was scary. My computer, like literally the whole thing just froze. I was literally about to turn the thing off and turn it back on, and then it just kicked back in. Thank you, Natalie Williams, 5x5. Appreciate you letting me know. We need to know that we can be heard. Cowboy Kitty, how are you, brother? Good to see you. Yes, Rachel is the Accord Lord's wife. How about that? That's a rumor. Teacher Indy from Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. Did I sound like that for a second? I'm guessing. It was mine. Yeah, fuck Israel. I guess that's what happens to my computer. I melt it down when I scream into it like that. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about Luigi. We haven't talked about Luigi in a couple of months. There's a lot of stuff again happening surrounding Luigi. Luigi Mangione, it's been 1 year, by the way, since Luigi was arrested and fed to the public as a patsy. That's kind of the way that I set this whole thing up, because I have believed from minute one that he didn't do it. I believed from minute one that it was days before we even found out. They had to put up somebody. They had to put up some kind of a patsy, some kind of a person that they are accused of, that's at least accused of doing this, because they didn't want the public to believe that they could get away, that anyone could get away with murdering a CEO on Fifth Avenue in the middle of the daytime, or even first thing in the morning as they're on their way to a board meeting. It was clearly a targeted killing. There's a lot of suspicion as to where it came from. I've heard some kind of corporate espionage, but that's a whole other story. I've got my own speculation. In the chat now, Descent in Bloom wrote an article about this week, and I wanted to bring that and read it to you and show you what this says. So, what's even funnier is that this week they're having a hearing, but she says they built the case against Luigi on an illegal search. That this week's hearing could dismantle the prosecution's case against Luigi 1 year after the shooting and months after the terrorism charge was already thrown out. And we covered when that charge was thrown out. And we've covered a lot of different things that have happened in his trial, and that they have set it up to throw this out on multiple ways and in multiple courts. So as she writes here, a year ago today, a health insurance CEO was shot on a Manhattan sidewalk. He was on his way to an investor meeting, a private gathering where corporate executives and managers were deciding how many lives they could cut to boost quarterly returns, and the world watched one of the largest civilian manhunts in modern history unfold as a result, ultimately leading to the arrest of one Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania on December 9th, 2024, literally a year ago today. The manhunt for Luigi was massive and immediate, but the manhunt nor the math ever made sense. Brian wasn't a soldier, a politician, or a celebrity. No, he was a health insurance CEO. Now, 1 year later, Mangione is no longer the target of a manhunt. He's a defendant in a New York courtroom fighting a state case that may not survive the scrutiny of the Constitution. She says, somewhere between the sound of fries hitting oil, names echoing from the counter, and the smell of cheap beef, the officers who arrested him forgot the Fourth Amendment existed. They searched his bag without a warrant. They knew they didn't have one, but they did it anyway because he might have a bomb or something, even though they didn't clear the building because they didn't really suspect that there was a bomb. Now, Mangione is fighting the search in court. Okay, he's facing charges in 3 jurisdictions, Pennsylvania, federal, and New York State, but this week's hearing is for the New York State case only. His next federal court date is set for January. The Pennsylvania case remains open with no scheduled hearing yet. They're just going to keep that thing open, and whenever they need another narrative change and another distractor from the media, that's when they'll call it. It's a suppression hearing, which means that the judge is deciding whether the evidence police collected that day can even be used at trial. It was gathered illegally, and seems it was. If it was gathered illegally, and it seems it was, it can be thrown out entirely. Most of the evidence the state is relying on, the gun, the silencer, the red notebook with his motive, quote unquote, scrawled inside that they keep calling a manifesto at the trial, the electronics, and even Luigi's own words could be thrown out. Why? Because police searched his bag without a warrant and are caught on camera admitting that they didn't have a warrant while actively searching his bag and had questioned him for nearly 20 minutes before reading him his Miranda rights. That means that both the physical evidence in that bag and any statements made by Luigi before being read his rights may be ruled inadmissible. not able to be used against him in the court of law. May. The judge can also decide that they're going to allow it either way. There's Luigi in the courtroom. Okay. In the arrest footage, you can hear Luigi ask the officers, "You guys calling a couple more cars? I'm not that big. I'm just wearing a puffy jacket." If the judge agrees that the search and interrogation violated his constitutional rights, the state will lose the core of its case. Case won't be dropped entirely, but evidence matters. And with no evidence, how much of a case is there really? A lot of information is coming out during this hearing, including the fact that McDonald's manager who called 911 couldn't describe Luigi beyond his eyebrows. Officer Tyler Fry, who was one of the responding officers, testified that he knew it was Luigi because he'd seen him on Fox News. That was all they needed. Police boxed him in, searched his bag without a warrant, and later claimed it was a check for a bomb. But since when does a bomb detection involve reading someone's notebook? The math isn't adding up. She says, "I wanted to get a rough estimate of just how much time, money, and manpower went into searching for Luigi, and this is what she found. That in 2015, New York spent $1 million a day chasing a prison escapee. The 5-day manhunt for Luigi Mangione likely cost just as much, totaling around $5 million. A 2023 report found that police typically spend only $18,000 investigating a standard murder. That means that the state spent around 500x more than to chase Luigi than it usually does seeking justice for anyone else, anyone like you or me. Of course, Brian Thompson's wealth made him matter in a way that most people never would. If it had been someone poor, someone ordinary, would America have responded the same way for you? No. It was never about justice or regular people like us would get the same treatment. It was a warning. Don't fuck with the ultra-wealthy or we will hunt you down. That's why they launched a nationwide manhunt for one man. That's why they purposely paraded Luigi in front of cameras like a trophy when they dragged him back to New York. They did the perp walk, the Joker walk. It's why Attorney General Pam Bondi used a press conference to announce to the public that they were seeking the death penalty on Luigi. It's why 3 different courts are trying him. There's also the reason that shortly after the arrest, they publicly posted photos to try to make him look afraid and like he'd peed on himself as a result. They wanted to teach us all a lesson. All that America saw was a man denied the right to use a restroom. All right, there's him with the perp walk, with stormtroopers all around him while he's completely cuffed. Like, what the hell's he going to do? It was just a show for the cameras. Delay, deny, depose. They reportedly found a bag of bullets in Central Park with 3 words carved into them. Remember, delay, deny, depose. I think we might even have a t-shirt up with those words on it. These words were a reference to a real book that teaches health insurance executives how to get rich by letting people suffer. Brian Thompson knew that playbook. So did Luigi's family, by the way. They operated home health facilities in Maryland. Delay the claim until the patient's desperate. Deny the care that they were promised. Depose them until they're too broke or too broken to fight back. That's the job. That's what he did. That's a choice he made every day, including the day he was killed. Remember that he was actively en route to an investor meeting to find out how to make even more money when he was shot. The media and the ultra-wealthy have tried to make Brian Thompson into a saint, but he was not. He was not a martyr. He was the CEO of a company that built profit on suffering. He also was a shitty husband, by the way. No, I'm not condoning and justifying what happened that day. I don't condone street murder. Again, people got very angry at her, apparently, thinking that she was justifying homicide. I understand. I'm not justifying it, but I can understand. But I also don't believe that it was him. Again, innocent until proven guilty, and the state has no case to prove. I want you all to remember that just a year before his death, United Health was hit with a class action lawsuit for using an AI tool called NH Predict to systematically deny care to elderly patients. The algorithm had a 90% error rate. They knew it. They used it anyway. Denials went out automatically, overriding real doctors, and they counted on patients being too sick or too poor to fight back. 90% of the patients. That's who this piece of shit was. That's who he chose to be every day. That is how he should be remembered. And months before he was killed, he was also named in an insider trading lawsuit. So there's motivations from his partners potentially to whack him out because he could have turned state's evidence and flipped on them. He and other executives dumped millions in stock right before the public found out about the antitrust investigation. Regular shareholders lost big, but he didn't. A Senate report had just dropped in October of 2024, calling out United Health for using prior authorization to block care and pad profits. The DOJ was digging into how United had used its monopoly over doctors employed by Optum to crush competition and control the entire system so they could make even more money. So no, Brian Thompson was not a good person. He didn't deserve to die, but he's a symbol of everything that's wrong with the system. And he exploited it, and he profited from it, and he had no problem going along with it and continuing it. They turned him into a victim to distract from the victims that he helped create. And that, to me, is the entire story right there. They turned Brian Thompson into a victim and tried to turn Luigi into a terrorist. Luigi, who they can't even prove did it. From the lives that Brian Thompson was complicit in ending to pad his pockets for shareholder value. They want to make an example out of Luigi to keep the rest of us in line. Anybody ever see the movie The Rainmaker or read the book, John Grisham book? This is pretty much exactly the story that someone brings an internal manual that has a pretty much a deny, defend, depose policy written only for the underwriters, but not shown to anybody else, that it actually was policy. And in the end of the book, they end up, well, you can find out what happens, but it's a book, you can guess. No matter how hard they try to smear him, Luigi Mangione has support around the world. From Marseille to Mexico City, from Italian city walls to American hospital waiting rooms, people know exactly why he did what he did. Because we've buried our mothers, our fathers, our children, and our friends after battles with insurance companies that wouldn't approve one more night in a hospital bed. We've watched nurses cry on the phone to appeal denials that they knew would come. We've begged strangers online for GoFundMe donations just to afford chemo or a ventilator, and I'm going to do that later tonight, actually. We've watched people suffer in silence while executives like Brian Thompson, worth millions, cashed another bonus check. That is why Luigi has support. This isn't about glorifying violence. It's about recognizing the quiet violence that came before it, the kind that no one puts on the news. The violence of being told no. The violence of waiting. The violence of being handed a bill instead of the care that you need. The violence of knowing that someone you loved might still be here if pieces of shit like Brian Thompson had made a different choice and weren't as greedy as they were. People support Luigi because they know what he's up against and because some part of them wishes that someone had stood up sooner. Not everyone agrees with how this happened, but they understand why it did, and that it's something that no smear campaign can erase. And I'll even disagree with, I don't think they understand why it did, because I don't think that Luigi Mangione did it. I don't think that the quote-unquote motivations that they're claiming that he had for doing it are even accurate or real. I don't believe any of this. I believe that this was corporate espionage. I believe that this was somebody hired by, and I'll say it, allegedly, the Carlyle Group, who has connections to a former director of national intelligence and could easily find someone to do this, took them out because they wanted to tank United Healthcare's stock price at the exact moment where they were both bidding on Luigi's family's fucking nursing home enterprise, home health enterprise, $150 million each. Nobody talks about this. It never came out. Maybe it's all conspiracy. According to Descendant Bloom, the facts are simple. A man was killed on his way to a meeting where he and other executives planned how to extract more money from the sick. The suspect, Luigi Mangione, was arrested days later under conditions that violated his constitutional rights. He was also wearing the clothes that he wore while committing the murder. Yeah, people do that, and they had the murder weapon on him and a manifesto that thanked the cops. I mean, anybody seen a false flag event before? No. The evidence was gathered without a warrant. On top of all of that, basically, so that they could then dismiss this for being incompetent. The questioning happened without Miranda rights being read. The charges include murder and stalking, but the state already tried and failed to make terrorism stick. The case now rests on a handful of items pulled from an illegal search and words spoken before his rights were read. At the same time, the man they call the victim was facing multiple lawsuits and federal investigations for denying care and harming people, defrauding investors, and manipulating entire markets, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, by the way. The story being told in court is not the whole story. It's not even the story. And the version being written for the public is one the system needs you to believe. You'll keep following this story and subscribe to follow along with her. And I appreciate her doing that. That's his fake ID. All right. Mark Rosario. It's actually a New Jersey driver's license was his fake ID, allegedly. But when they ask about that and they asked him what his name was, he said his name was Mark. Interesting. And I just wanted to point out that this trial is being covered in real time by inner city press. Matthew Lee, I think is his name. Okay. He has been doing a bang up job, and I'm going to include the links to all 5 of the threads for the 5 days of coverage from these suppression hearings. These guys actually submitted a FOIA request that got some of the evidence unsealed so you could see his credit cards, so you could see his Maryland driver's license and his passport. All right. This was the letter that he had sent requesting for the material to be unsealed. Fascinating stuff. To support inner city press, I said, how does this not have thousands of likes and RTs? When I retweeted it this morning, it had less than 10 retweets. 28 retweets for an entire thread detailing exactly what happened verbatim in the courtroom. Like literally, 9:55. Justice Caro dealt with another case. 9:57, Luigi's let out of his cell in handcuffs, then uncuffed. Like, this is a play-by-play without opinions inserted. Who says what? Like, this is really important stuff. Shout out to Inner City Press. Again, another independent outlet. They're covering this every day. All right. Now, this used to be Ryan Knight's account. I don't know if it still is. Ryan's been off Twitter for a while, and he's kind of been in hiding or whatever. But whoever's running the Proud Socialist account still posts here. He also points out, we know that the police searched Luigi's backpack without a warrant. They detained and interrogated him for over 20 minutes before reading him his rights, that his eyebrows don't match the eyebrows from the security footage of the mass shooter. If the eyebrows don't split, you must acquit. Very funny. And I reminded him that this was from May. And here's a Snow Himbo coverage from January. But we basically knew all of this a year ago when we covered this, and that it was one big psyop back last year. And thank you to everyone who's liked and gone back and watched that. It was one of the most watched videos this week on the channel. And that's all these tweets. Also, and again, that, and I don't know why this was playing, but this was the, that's why I had it queued up. Let's see if it works again. And again, I feel like they're setting up for a mistrial to possibly let him go if at any point they decide that they no longer need him or he's inconvenient to their narrative or. They've also been trying to make him out to be Hannibal Lecter effectively. So this article lays out how the DOJ appears to have violated his right to a fair trial because you have the White House press secretary speaking out against him. It appears that multiple employees of the Justice Department may have violated Local Criminal Rule 23.1. Okay, so that was in September. So we know that they've already been publicly trying to taint this trial, and they're using every method possible, it seems, to figure out how to get out of this. Like, they fucked up bad. They need to let this guy go. And I don't know why they just won't let him out. You know, there is I guess, a bloodthirsty side to this that has demanded that some justice be done on behalf of Brian Thompson. I don't know who that is other than the CEO class. But weird. Maybe they'll send Luigi to Ukraine to replace Zelensky. I doubt that. That's an interesting that's an interesting theory. No, again, I agree. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying. This is a fantastic article, Descent to Bloom. It's just, I think that a lot of what this entire trial is a show. And like you're pointing out, they've illegally seized a bunch of stuff. They've made a lot of procedural mistakes, almost it seems intentionally, so that at any point this can be dismissed by a judge and he can be sent home. Why he hasn't been already and why they haven't called for dismissals, I'm guessing they haven't. It's been denied. I don't remember hearing about a hearing for that, but free this man, because again, until he's proven guilty, he should at least allowed to be out on bail. Again, it is, they have no evidence. Yes, I understand that it's a murder thing normally, but he had no priors. He had no record. It's the most bizarre thing that they are determined to keep this guy locked up for as long as absolutely possible. Well, again, I'm not sure how many people are going to come from that angle, so support the independent media that does, and I appreciate you doing that. The ways to do that are using Cash App, $ Indie News Network. We've got ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. That'll show up something over on the screen, hopefully. I don't know today because of the reboot. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. The IndieNewsNow.com website, where we're live right now. You can go to the Watch Live section and watch us. You can also keep the media free by clicking on that, leaving a tip for the network. Go to IndieMediaToday.com. We're live over there right now, also on my Substack. And then INN Newsletter for the network that we're a part of. And that sends out a weekly update, including all of the content for everyone at the network. Okay, we got through the Luigi stuff. Now we're going to get to something really fucking creepy. All right. So it's sort of connected to Epstein, but it's also connected to private equity. Lifetouch. Anybody have kids in school? I think some of us do. Any kids in school, anyone with kids in school knows who Lifetouch is. And Lifetouch is talking, they handle the school photography. And our friend 7C's, friend of the network, friend of the show, did a deep dive on Lifetouch. And he says, make sure your kids are skipping picture day. The first, he does a thread on Twitter, which I'm going to go through. He also wrote this in article format, but I think that the Twitter thread has a little bit more depth to it. So I'm going to go through this and then we'll read the article. And then I want to watch another video which shows yet another private equity firm that's buying up even more of this kid photo stuff. And what's the plan for all this? Why do they want to own the rights to the likenesses of every child in school? Shutterfly Inc. is an interesting company because it's almost entirely cloud-based, meaning that they're more than likely collecting and storing the photos they take of your child on a server somewhere. They're also taking photos of your children year after year, effectively giving them a generous sample of age progression for each child. But who owns Shutterfly Inc.? Well, it's a company called Apollo Global Management. They purchased Shutterfly Inc. in 2019, shortly after the Lifetouch acquisition. Apollo Global Management, hedge fund, is especially nefarious and should be on everyone's radar. What do we mean? Quote, within 6 months after the collapse of Drexel Burnham, Apollo launched Apollo Investment Fund LP, the first of its private equity investment funds formed to make investments in distressed companies. Apollo raised around $400 million of investor commitments based on Leon Black's reputation as a prominent lieutenant of Michael Milken and a key player in the buyout boom of the 1980s. Yes, that Michael Milken, the one who went to jail, and Drexel Burnham Lambert essentially restructured itself under the name Apollo Global Management. They just rebranded. People may remember Leon Black, who was the CEO of Apollo Global Management until 2021, where he stepped down due to criticisms of his notorious involvement with none other than Jeffrey Epstein, to whom he had donated millions of dollars. All right? New York Times investigation revealed how the MoMA trustee, one of the country's richest men, was often pressured by Epstein to pay up millions. I wonder why he would do such a thing. I wonder if he's had compromised material on him. Oh, here's another one where he's accused of raping a teen in Jeffrey Epstein's New York townhouse. Allegedly. But of course, that's Alison Morrow for CNN before she was tossed out by corporate media. She's independent these days. Oh, but he also agreed to pay $62.5 million to settle those claims because everybody pays out that kind of money when they didn't do anything, right? The senior executive for Apollo Global Management for a while was Cheryl Gordon, whose husband was none other than Alvin Krongard, the George Tenet-approved CIA director, responsible for setting up In-Q-Tel and working with Paul Bremer to get Eric Prince contracts way back in Iraq. You mean Blackwater? Yes, that Eric Prince. Krongard was on the board at Blackwater while serving as the CIA director. That's not a conflict of interest or anything. Oh, right, it is. Apollo Global actually now owns what used to be Blackwater. Blackwater then morphed into Academy. Academy merged with Triple Canopy, rebranded as Constellus, and then Constellus was acquired by Apollo Global Management in 2020. The Times reports that, quote, the CIA did not have a formal contract with Blackwater for this program, but instead had individual agreements with top company officials, including the founder, Eric Prince. You know, he also is the brother of Betsy DeVos, our former education secretary, and the son of Dick DeVos from the Amway family. There's all kinds of ridiculous money. He's a retired intelligence officer, intimately familiar with the assassination program, told WAPO, and I don't know if I believe this, but it's WAPO, quote, outsourcing gave the agency more protection in case something went wrong. I just lost my place here. In case something went wrong, the Post reported that Blackwater was given operational responsibility for targeting terrorist commanders and was awarded millions of dollars for training and weaponry, but the program was canceled before any missions were conducted. So they washed through all this money, got him all this equipment, and then canceled the program without actually having them do anything. What the agency was doing with Blackwater scares the hell out of me, said a former CIA field operator who worked for the Directorate of Operations, which runs covert paramilitary operations for the CIA. When the agency actually cedes all oversight and power to a private organization, an organization like Blackwater, most importantly, they lose control and don't understand what's going on because they don't want to. What makes it even worse is that you can then turn around and have deniability. You could say, it wasn't us. We weren't the ones making the decisions. That's the best of both worlds. It's analogous to what we hear about torture that was being done in the name of Americans when we simply handed somebody over to the Syrians or the Egyptians or others, and then we turn around and say, we're not torturing people. Reached by telephone, Illinois Democrat Jan Schakowsky, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, said that because of her oath of secrecy on sensitive intel issues, she can neither confirm nor deny that Congress was aware of Blackwater's involvement in this program before the Times report. Schakowsky also declined to comment on whether Blackwater came up at a June briefing by then CIA Director Leon Panetta, also a war criminal, which she attended. That briefing sparked calls for an investigation into whether Dick Cheney ordered the CIA to conceal an assassination program from Congress. What we know now, if this is true, is that Blackwater was part of the highest level, the innermost circle, strategizing and exercising strategy within the Bush administration. Eric Prince operated at the highest and most secret level of the government. Clearly, Prince was trusted more than the U.S. Congress because Cheney made the decision not to brief Congress. This shows that there was absolutely no space whatsoever between the Bush admin and Blackwater. Those are the ones that carried out the torture at Abu Ghraib. So he goes into who else Apollo owns, because they also own a swath of other companies as well. And many of them are marketed towards or involve products and or services whose primary demographic is children, including ADT, which is home security, Athenian Group. Okay, and he goes into all of these. Most of them are benign, and you wouldn't know half of them, but Chuck E. Cheese. Think about all like the photos and all the other activity and behavior that they're gathering at Chuck E. Cheese. Okay. Then there's also Claire's, targeting teen girls and young women. Coinstar, which targets poorer community, turning loose change into paper currency. Cox Media Group, owning media, radio, television stations. They're looking at Great Wolf Resorts. That's interesting. Intel said now that's geared towards families. Jacuzzi brand hot tubs. Legendary Entertainment. So they've got movie studios so they can create media stars. McGraw-Hill Education. That actually is not accurate. And I reached out to Seven Seas. They were sold in 2020 to yet another private equity firm that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Platinum Equity or Platinum Partners, right? So Michaels, we know about Michaels, the craft store, Qdoba, Redbox, tons of stuff. What private equity does is they own a ton of a suite of companies and then bundle them together, sell off certain ones, fund certain ones, or run them into the ground sometimes. But who really owns Apollo Global Management? Well, it's all the usual players. Vanguard, BlackRock, Capital World Investors, FMR LLC. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure it's some major billionaire. JP Morgan Chase, State Street. That's all the top banks right there. All the top investment firms own a piece of this. And these are the people who are profiting each time you purchase school photos from Lifetouch. They're contracted with public schools across the country, capturing your child's likeness to store on their servers, and almost definitely are using it to train AI models within every conceivable application of the data. All right? That 90% of the float is held by institutions, and that a quarter of all shares of Apollo are held by insiders. He also said, one fact I missed regarding this thread, which indicates to me that Shutterfly is more than likely using your child's biometrics to train their AI models. In 2021, they were implicated in a lawsuit filed by a class of Illinois residents who claimed that the photo sharing company illegally collected and stored their biometric data without their consent. They were forced to pay almost $7 million in a class action settlement as a result of the suit filed by two plaintiffs who had alleged in Illinois state court that Shutterfly uses facial recognition technology to collect and store the biometric identifiers of anyone who appears in a photo uploaded to its program. So it's using facial recognition to literally face target, face track you. That's creepy. So reading the article, I don't know what, let's just kind of skim it really quick. All right. Again, this was a lot of the same things. Who owns that? Apollo. Here's who it is. Here's the link about Michael Milken going to jail. Drexel Burnham Lambert restructuring, right? So this is basically that thread reimagined into a Substack post with links. Leon Black with the $62.5 million payment to the Virgin Islands regarding his dealings with Epstein. Gross. Apollo Global and Blackwater and how linked they are. Constellus Holdings, which is now owned by Apollo. It's all connected. So this is what 7 Seas is famous for. He uses a program called Obsidian to make links between all these different entities. This one's funding this, who happens to be a member of this, and that's how these people are connected. Watch 7 Seas live streams and you'll see a lot of this, showing how these people are married. And this one's the director of these two things. These are fascinating deep dives. He went through a couple of them when we did our one-on-ones earlier this year. Check those out at INNnewsletter.com or over on INN's YouTube channel. So again, here's all the list of all the companies and things that they hold. I would actually have linked to each one of those, but that's a lot of work. All right. Same thing about who owns them and what could they possibly be using all of this for. Right. So he also went on What is Truth podcast with Wheezy. I don't know if you guys know who Wheezy is. Wheezy's good. He's got buttery smooth voice and amazing looking studio. He does the What is Truth podcast. He hosts an MMA show with Steve Poikin and a couple other people. So don't miss this, the What is Truth podcast. I'll link to that also. But this one I also wanted to bring because it's not just Apollo and it's not just Lifetouch. This is the company that McGraw-Hill was sold to. And this is Tiffany Cianci. I never heard of her before. I started digging into her a little bit. She just did a thing with Ian Carroll, which doesn't make me crazy, honestly, but I saw this video and this video was spot goddamn on. So let's watch this and then we'll talk about this afterwards.
Really great video about Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, owning McGraw-Hill, the textbook company that has a monopoly in private schools and public schools all across the U.S. But do you know who owns it now? Because that, to me, matters more in this moment. And I want you to understand who is controlling the narrative that is teaching your children right now. And I don't think you're going to like it. So if you don't know, Platinum Equity owns McGraw-Hill. They acquired them in 2021. But who owns Platinum Equity? Well, I'm going to tell you. Platinum Equity is a private equity firm that was founded and is operated out of Beverly Hills, California by Tom Gores. Now, who is Tom Gores? Where's he from? What's he all about? And why is he controlling all of the textbooks in America? Thomas Gores was born in Nazareth, Israel, and then he matriculated to Michigan, where he grew up and became a big player, billionaire in American politics and in American industry. Now, I talk a lot about private equity, but Platinum Equity is known for some horrifying investments, especially in the for-profit prison system and exploitation racket and in the education system. I want to show you how they're creating monopolies that are single-handedly driving up costs for the poorest people and the people with the least amount of leverage in America. Now, in addition to owning the Detroit Pistons, why do they all own sports teams? Why? They also own Jostens and McGraw-Hill, which have monopolies on contracts with schools everywhere in every public school system in America.
Pause. They also own LifeScan. So I said Lifetouch, but there's another company that makes deals with schools and hospitals to take pictures of babies when they're first born, and that's LifeScan.
You know, that company that has every photograph that's ever been taken of your child and controls it and its likeness. You know, that company that has a full-on monopoly for all class rings, all graduation materials, everything that you have to buy that has a price that's fixed, that is exploitative so poor people can't afford to graduate and have the things that everyone else can have. They own them, of course. And McGraw-Hill, which has a near monopoly on the entire school book industry in the United States. But wait, there's more, because what I want to talk about is an investment they made in a company called Securus. Now, Securus was a company that created technology to enable communication between prisoners and their families outside of for-profit prisons. And it's amazing because
Fred matriculated to another country. Well, she went to school there. He went to school there. I think that's what she means. He was a matriculating student in Michigan, and that's when they moved. That's why they moved there to go to school. But anyway,
because as soon as they acquired Securus got monopoly contracts on an entire massive prison system. And suddenly what happened was the prisoners were cut off from in-person visits. They said, we don't have in-person visits anymore. No. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to make it where you have to use these external phone systems, and that's the only way you can see your relatives. But it comes with a price. There's no more free visitation. And what happened after that is horrifying. In 2024, multiple civil rights organizations filed civil lawsuits against Securus that said that once they entered the jail system in Michigan, what happened was they hiked up the pricing on calls to families so that you were paying a minimum of $12.99 to $20.99 to see your kid for your visitation. Only prisoners don't have $12.99 to $20.99. So if you didn't have money, you didn't get to see your children or your family anymore when they could have come to visit for free in person prior to this.
That's
now
so
they
fucked
started
up.
charging 21 cents per minute for phone calls that were not video calls. And then they set up a kickback scheme where 50% of every one of those phone calls was getting kicked back to the county to stop people from seeing their relatives, their children.
This reminds me of the Descent in Bloom article where she's talking about that the county is getting rich off the ICE contracts by jailing the ICE detainees. This sounds very similar and so dark. But it makes the county and the state partner, which gives them the incentive to enforce this shit.
Children, their family members, their friends. And the contract went further. It had a minimum guarantee that they would get at least $190,000 in kickbacks for the county for forcing these prisoners to use this system. Now, study after study has shown that when prisoners are given access to a strong support and family network, they are much more likely to actually reform themselves and do well coming out of prison later. But if you're in the for-profit prison system, you don't care about that. You want that revolving door spinning like this. Now let's talk about how our education system plays a critical role in how our young people are trained to either move into success or failure and on track to a prison system. The prison and public school pipelines to prison is a well-known and established problem in the United States. It's oftentimes the way that they choose where to build for-profit prisons is looking at the third grade reading levels of people in public schools in a given area. And when they see that the reading levels are very low, they know that 15 years from now, the prison need will be higher. And that's how they choose where to build for-profit prisons. So you have to understand that controlling our education system, controlling our scholastic programs is also creating a pipeline to the prison system. And private equity has their hands in all of it. But it's also how we instill and shape public opinion from an early age. And I want to show you one of the ways that they're doing it for adults in America, because they also happen to Cision and center field. Now, if you're not familiar with Cision is literally the leading technology provider for tracking and shaping PR and marketing narratives in the United States and the world. They control and track every Google reference, mention, PR, press release. They control everything.
The press release company.
Public narrative and public opinion on any and every given issue. And they are also owned by Platinum Equity. I don't like coming on here and being doom and gloom. I don't like coming on here and talking about private equity constantly. It's dark. But people have to start to recognize that the entire world has become monopolized and controlled by the hands of 100 people that literally control everything we buy, everything we do, everything our children learn, everywhere that we take our kids, everything we read online, everything that happens in prison systems and foster care and everywhere in between. And if we don't wake up and start passing some referendum laws to bring an end to it, we're not going to be able to bring it back in. We have got to start making a difference and demanding more. And this is not a one-party problem. Both parties take this money. Both parties benefit financially from this entire system. Both parties leave Congress and run off to sit on boards of directors at private equity firms. Ask Kristen Sinema. She just did it again. All right? So you have to understand that these people don't serve us, but we have to start serving one another, and we can do it through passing referendum laws, getting private equity out of home ownership, getting private equity out of monopolistics, passing new regional antitrust and monopoly laws at our state level. We can make a difference, but we actually have to try.
That was a good one. I want to go back. Somebody asked about Cision. I think it's Cision. I wanted to show where she's pointing up at the logo. Hold on, Cision or Cision, Cision. I can just go to the website and show you there. But yeah, this was a really good video. Just showing again how much private equity is controlling all of it. And you can be sure that Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, JP Morgan are all invested and bought into this one too. They all seem to own a piece of all of this. Cool. Descent and Bloom may do an article on this weekend. Great. Look forward to seeing that. All right. It's almost a full-time job to find independent businesses, which I do support. Agreed, Desert Mantis. It's really hard. And you're usually paying more to support them, which is unfortunate, but they don't have the economies of scale that these massive businesses do. Said to Bloom, Reagan's comprehensive crime bill created a booming industry for private jailers. The war on drugs, too. Look who's lobbied for these laws. The fact that orgs like Geo Group and Core Civic jail Americans, too. Yeah. And they were the ones who've been profiting the most off of Alligator Alcatraz and off of all these ICE contracts and everything else. Interesting, kill your egregores. Apollo the sun god, Ra. So weird that the elites believe in all this esoteric, dark ritual, dark enlightenment shit, I think they call it. Yep, they do. And I think that a lot of those web strands in 7C's obsidian graphs actually do tie back to Israel and have a lot of ties to Israel. Yep, all these occult, creepy-ass names, absolutely for sure. All right, just to go back and look at some of the comments that came in during the show. Vulture capitalism at its finest. Amen. Yep. All right. So, fuck private equity, man. They run the world. It's gross. And nobody sees these people. They're the ones also that are in hiding. They're the ones that are all about protecting Brian Thompson and convicting the Luigi Mangiones. So fuck all those guys. All right. Support independent media, because we do here. You don't really see us cover any corporate media stuff. I try really hard to support and amplify independence and go to a trusted independent source wherever possible to get the story. I think it's really possible to do that. That means that we are self-funded and we don't take advertiser funding and we don't take donor money and we don't take sponsor money. We have you. So we rely on you tipping through Cash App, $, Indie News Network. We've got paypal.me/Indie News Network. We also have co-fi.com/Indie News Network. That'll go over to PayPal. And we've got our website, IndieNewsNow.com. That's where we host the news there. We have a news aggregator so you can read all independent stuff, not just us, from a ton of different sources, and watch us live and get merch and. So check that out at IndieNewsNow.com. We're also live at IndieMediaToday.com. That's our Substack. So go check us out over there. And also live over at, we're also, check out Indie News Network. That's INNewsletter.com. That's the newsletter for the network that we're part of. Okay. I have got one other set of stories about the military from Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com, Indie Media Award honoree. So a couple of people have pointed out to me that what we're starting to see is that the U.S. military is starting to move closer to home. And that they've decided that fighting half a world away is not nearly as economical as controlling the hemisphere of influence that they have a much easier time controlling, which would be South America. They also are obsessed with Africa for some reason, and we're going to find out why at some point. I don't know when, but let's get into what's going on right now. So first off, Pete Hegseth, Whiskey Pete, we know all about him. Again, this is Dave DeCamp, Anti-War News, Indie Media Award honorees. There's a report that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, formerly Defense, but of course they had to spend $2 billion to change the name. He ousted the head of the U.S. Southern Command, who started raising concerns about these boat strikes, these murders without trial that are being ordered on boats coming out of Venezuela. Admiral Alvin Halsey, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, who abruptly announced that he was stepping down in October, was pushed out by Pete Hegseth, according to the Wall Street Journal. The report said that Hegseth and Halsey were at odds during the first months of the Trump admin, and the tension intensified when Halsey expressed concerns about the murky legal authority for the bombing campaign against alleged drug boats in Latin America, which is clearly illegal under U.S. and international law. Halsey also objected to the parts of the operation that fell outside of his control, since other military units under separate chains of command were also involved, including elite special operations units. What were they doing? Earlier in the year, Hegseth was unhappy with Halsey for not drawing up plans to reclaim the Panama Canal quickly enough, and suspected that the four-star admiral may have been involved in leaks of potential U.S. plans for the waterway. Remember that they were trying to force China to give up its stake in the Panama Canal, and they basically used BlackRock to buy the controlling towers at either end of the canal that gave it a lot of control anyway. Halsey, of course, hasn't given a reason for his early retirement, which is highly unusual for a career military officer just 1 year into a 3-year term as the head of a combatant command. When he first announced he was stepping down in October, the Times reported that he had raised concerns about the boat strikes. Pretty clear what's happening here. At the time, Hegseth praised Halsey in a statement on his retirement, which always happens, and officials told him masked policy tensions concerning Venezuela that the admiral and his civilian boss were seeking to paper over. Remember that Hegseth is a civilian, or has been for decades, and that he was not a good soldier, allegedly, while he was there, again, carousing, drinking, not a leader, not what a 4-star general does. The revelation from the Journal that Hegseth pushed out Halsey comes as the U.S. war chief is under increasing scrutiny over the first bombing of an alleged drug boat on September 2nd, which involved more than one strike to kill survivors. Hegseth has shifted his story on the attack, now claiming that he wasn't in the room for the second strike. and has placed responsibility for the order on Admiral Frank Bradley, commander of Special Ops. They're all war criminals. Every single one of them should be in The Hague right now. Did we get attacked? Because the last I knew, we didn't. There's no justification. It's international waters, so it's fair game. The boat came out of Venezuela. Everybody knows it. But Venezuela isn't the only place that the U.S. military is acting up south of the equator. There's also been a bunch of stuff happening in Africa, as we've reported before, and I really have not talked about this. Reef and Colin have done a bang-up job talking about this. To his credit, Steve over at AM Wake Up has also been covering Dave DeCamp, who's like the only person that's been talking about, in our space at least, these strikes on Somalia. Did you even know that we've been bombing Somalia more than 100 times this year? Most people don't. AFRICOM announces 7 more airstrikes in Somalia as Trump continues record-shattering bombing campaign. The U.S. has bombed Somalia at least 109 times this year, which again is an unprecedented number. Coming from Dave DeCamp, Indie Media Award honoree, from Anti-War Indie Media Award honorees. That too. U.S. Africa Command has announced in recent days that its forces have launched at least 7 more airstrikes in Somalia as the Trump admin continues its record-breaking bombing campaign in the country, which receives virtually no media coverage in the United States. AFRICOM said in a press release, so you know that they're lying, that it launched airstrikes in Somalia's northeastern Puntland region on November 26th, 27th, and 28th, which it said targeted the ISIS affiliate in a remote mountain region about 37 miles to the southeast of the Gulf of Aden port city of Bosaso. ISIS. I thought ISIS was like affiliated with us in Israel, basically. They're like our terrorists. The command said in another press release that it launched more airstrikes against ISIS in the same area of Puntland on December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. A separate airstrike that was launched on December 3rd targeted Al-Shabaab near the village of Kobone in the southern Jubaland region, according to a third AFRICOM press release. Why are they putting these out? Why are they even bothering? Nobody's paying attention to any of this. They have to because they have to account for something. Somebody's going to ask a question at some point. The 6 days of U.S. airstrikes in Puntland came after the commander of U.S. AFRICOM, General Dagvin, visited the region and called for the war against the ISIS fighters hiding out in caves to be intensified. Sounds like we're cleaning up our own mess. The U.S. had been backing local Puntland forces since the region is not under control of the Mogadishu-based federal government. The command didn't specify how many airstrikes it launched, but counting each day as one bombing brings the total number of U.S. airstrikes in Somalia this year to 109, an unprecedented number. Why? President Trump has shattered the previous record for annual U.S. airstrikes in Somalia, which he had set in 2019 at 63. According to numbers from New America, which tracks the U.S. air war in Somalia, President Joe Biden, the fossil, who wasn't really operating his own foreign policy, allegedly, launched a total of 51 airstrikes in Somalia throughout his entire 4 years in office. And Obama had launched 48 over 8 years. Again, between the two of those Democratic presidents, you're talking 99 airstrikes on Somalia. How often has Somalia attacked the United States? Why are we launching airstrikes in that country? Trump had launched 219 during his first term. And then we're already at 109 during the second term. The U.S. has been involved in Somalia for decades and has been fighting al-Shabaab since the Bush administration, the W administration, backed an Ethiopian invasion in 2006 that ousted the Islamic Courts Union, a Muslim coalition that briefly held power in Mogadishu after taking the city from CIA-backed warlords. Al-Shabaab was the radical offshoot of the Islamic Courts Union, and its first recorded attack was a suicide bombing that targeted Ethiopian troops occupying Mogadishu. The ISIS affiliate in Somalia that's now based in Puntland started as an offshoot of Al-Shabaab and first emerged in 2015. That's weird, because we were backing ISIS in other places, or at least not fighting against them in Iraq and Afghanistan and in other places. Hell, the head of ISIS in Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is now the head of Syria, al-Jilani. Like, what? Kudos to David Anti-War. Yeah, that's right, Desert Mantis. Kudos to you for hanging out over on Odyssey. Yes, we're live on Odyssey. INN goes live to Odyssey as well. And then we publish all that to our page afterwards. And shout out to Anti-War, because they're celebrating 30 years in existence. Turns 30 years old today. Happy birthday, antiwar.com. And they're doing a year-end fund drive. They're a 501c3. So if you're able to support independent media, they're user-funded as well. So what do you think about what's going on in Africa and Venezuela? It's weird. I mean, look, they've got to find, I guess, something to use the military on. And to continue, now that they're going to wind down Afghanistan, it seems they have to find places to shift where the money is going to go towards, so they can justify that $1 trillion military budget. We're going to talk about that next week, too, because I think the Congress is finally passing that $1 trillion military budget. All right, so we're up to our lightning round, and we are going to get out of here after doing the GoFundMes. So let's do this. Descent in Bloom, I know, is familiar with this article because she brought it on a podcast that she was on this week that featured some Russia-gating shitlibs that tried to pin everything on Russia, and she brought this one reminding people that the 7 richest billionaires are all media barons and are controlling the narrative, and they ain't doing it for Russia. All right? This is all about media monopolies. This is, again, Alan McLeod with Min Press News. Both Indie Media Award honorees. All right. Larry Ellison is one of them. And then we've got Billionaire Capture. Dan Rather is correct. No other period in history has seen such a rapid and overwhelming buy-up of our means of communications by the billionaire class. A fact that raises tough questions about freedom of speech and diversity of opinion. This is a great article, but it's long. So I didn't want to bring this tonight because this would have taken a long time to read. Plus, it's got receipts from previous articles and a lot of links to other stuff, references. Go read this article. It's really, really good by Alan McLeod. He's one of the best there is. So that's our first one. Next, I've got just a note from Notes Against the Empire. Okay. William Murphy, I know that guy. He's in he hangs out with Prol Pilled once in a while. Somebody replies to his video and says, I think one of the reasons why people are losing interest in politics is because the system increasingly serves corporate and elite interests, leaving ordinary people feeling like spectators rather than participants in decisions that shape their lives. Amen. Also, social media is frustrating for political discourse because it amplifies outrage without agency, turning civic engagement into performative spectacle rather than meaningful action. Can't agree more with all that. Finally, we have Arturo. Now, this is another crazy story. Arturo, I subscribe to, another independent journalist. Decolonized Journalism is his publication, extremearturo.substack.com. Representative, and she's our newest seated representative. They held out. The part of the reason why we had the shutdown was so they didn't have to seat her because she would have voted to release the Epstein files, which they tried to delay. Representative Adelita Grijalva, and if you know that name, it's because she's the daughter of former Representative Raul Grijalva, who died this year or last year. She witnessed an ICE raid by Taco Giro in Tucson. Taco Grillo. Taco Grillo is a small mom and pop restaurant that served the community for years. When she presented herself as a member of Congress asking for more info, she says she was pushed aside and pepper sprayed by ICE, a congresswoman.
People. We had, I would say, maybe 40 ICE agents, most of them masked, in several vehicles that the community had stopped right here, right in the middle of the street, because they were afraid that they were taking people without due process, without any kind of notice. And so I was here. This is like the restaurant I come to literally once a week, and was sprayed in the face by a very aggressive agent, pushed around by others when I literally was not being aggressive. I was asking for clarification, which is my right as a member of Congress. So once introduced myself, once I did, I assumed that it would be a little calmer, but there was literally only one person that was trying to speak to me in any kind of civil tone, and everyone else was being rude and disrespectful. And I just can only imagine, if they're going to treat me like that, how they're treating everybody else. So we saw it. We saw people directly sprayed, members of our press, everybody that was with me, my staff member, myself, 2 staff members we have like remnants of whatever they sprayed on us. Excuse me, it's bothering me. And I think that this is one of the problems, the biggest problem that we have in this community, is that we have Trump that has no regard for any due process, the rule of law, the Constitution. They're literally disappearing people from the streets. They arrested 2 people. We have no idea where they're going. And I want to thank Tucson Police Department for coming and taking care of the space, making sure that everyone was safe once ICE left. And you can see that traffic is back to normal because of them. And so they were not the aggressors here. They arrived on the scene after ICE was already here and after there was a block in the street. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. I want to protect the people in this community, and that's why I showed up. I think it's important for me to have eyes on what's happening here and not just have it be, stories through other people. So I'll keep you posted if I hear anything else.
A congressperson actually doing her job and serving the community. How novel. And of course, getting treated like a member of the community and like ICE treats Latinas. And it doesn't matter if you're a member of Congress, apparently. See, they don't discriminate. They pepper spray everyone. That's right, Desert Mantis. Unreal. I also have this. This was another one. We did a deep dive. God, when they did the protests at UCLA, and we covered how it was the Zionists that were instigating, and Dr. Phil did a ride along with them, and they had ex-IDF guys there, and that they were the ones that were starting the violence. And then I even did a show last summer where I brought an article from Steve Semler of Polygraph charting that 99% of the violence that was caused during all those campus protests were caused by Zionists. All right, well, this is further validation. Eli Valley shares an excellent deep dive into the violence perpetrated by fascist Zionist thugs at UCLA. Democrats, Republicans, the ADL, and the media have spent over a year lying that the violence was an anti-Semitic attack on Jews, which it wasn't, and have used it and other lies to eviscerate American higher education. Right? So this is from an article in Jewish Currents, and this screen cap states, quote, "The attack of April 30th, 2024 remains an untreated wound, with the university thus far avoiding any official reckoning with its role in the most extreme night of vigilante violence endured by any Palestine solidarity encampment nationwide, including Columbia. The story of that night and what came after it is particular to UCLA, yet the experience of the students treated as expendable by their own university is vividly illustrative of the forceful opposition arrayed against the student movement as a whole. And it shows how advocates for Israel set the terms of the campus battle. Quote, the only way UCLA really has been exceptional, Waxman told me, is its exceptional failure to protect the students in its encampment from violence, unquote. And I said, we called this in real time, that they called in the goon squad to change the narrative on the college campuses and claim that there was violence being perpetrated. So they called in Zionists to create a little violent situation. And then again, we showed by the numbers proving that that violence was a myth and corporate media driven, and that the violence was done by ex-IDF and by cops, and that the protests on college campuses were peaceful. They were sleeping out in tents. They were not violent. What would happen is a Zionist would come in, they would talk with them, the Zionists would get frustrated, and then threaten violence. That's not acceptable. Two other points of note before we get out of here really quick. There is going to be on Friday a Q&A with the Independent Media Alliance that consists of, right now I know, committed to go Ian Davis, Ryan Christian of The Last American Vagabond, Derek Brose from The Conscious Resistance, Hervoye Morek from Geopolitics and Empire, Kit Knightley from Off Guardian, and Steve from AM Wake Up. And I believe this is going to happen right after the Independent Review on Friday, live streamed. Most of these IMA panels are not live streamed, so that's a privilege. And if you're able to and you want to submit a question in advance, you can go to off-guardian.org and go to this article and submit a question for the Alliance that they may address on screen during the show. Finally, I wanted to also call attention to the the tech tips that we did on Thursday night live. I really enjoyed doing that. I was able to show you a little bit of behind the scenes of the document that I create for a show, and a little bit about Canva and what I do with Canva, and a lot about Substack behind the scenes and the different elements that comprise what Substack is. And I think a lot of people are still confused about everything that Substack is as a platform, because there are a lot of things that you can do there. It's got social media, it's got publishing, it's got video, it's got podcasting, it's all, and it's of course got writing. So, and an RSS reader as well. So go check out, if you're interested at all in learning anything about the behind the scenes tools, by all means, go check that out. And I was mentioning how Sabs, shout out to Sabby, does a really nice job on her newsletter, where she literally just embeds the YouTube video, sends it out with a title, and does nothing else. But she's building up a mailing list that if anything, heaven forbid, ever happened to one of her other properties, she would have the ability to message directly everybody that has subscribed to that list and let them know that she's been censored. Talking about leaderboards on Substack, et cetera, Restream, and all the different things that we have within Restream, and the value of that program in order to multi-stream and use that as a tool to stream out web-based to a multitude of websites. And we're actually using Restream right now as a pass-through. So again, that's our tech tips. All right, real quick, before we do that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. The ways to do that: Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, at IndieNewsNow.com, where you can go and keep the media free, and at Substack over at IndieMediaToday.com, and at INNNewsletter.com. Both of those are newsletters that you can subscribe to, that you'll get great content in, and can subscribe on a monthly or annual basis. Okay, time to get to the GoFundMes. First off, we've got Shanda. I got a positive update from Shanda. So this was 4 days ago. Today is my last day of second line chemo, meaning I've done 2 different rounds of chemo in the last year, and 9 months of immunotherapy. She was heading to Fred Hutch for clinical trial next. There are so many hundreds of people that she needs to thank, and if we're reading that, we're probably one of them. A very good friend, Leslie Springrice, worked for many years to become a 4X black belt. Then she honored her by giving it to help for her battle against cancer. That's awesome. She's certainly a black belt in kicking cancer's ass. All right. All right. Yesterday, she was on a cold, rainy day. She came home to an opossum's hoodie from her sweet Santa, Natalie Williams, who's in chat. Shout out to Natalie. Love you, Natalie. She's the best. God, Natalie's awesome. I wish I had 100 Natalies in chat. But there's only one Natalie. All right. Love you all so much. And I know we still wouldn't be here without all of you. We love you. Also, again, she gives a little bit more of a detailed update on her GoFundMe, and I will drop a link to that GoFundMe where she's still asking for help and still needs help in battling small cell lung cancer and having it not spread. So, love you, Shanda, and keep fighting, and we're with you. Next, we got Cowboy Kitty and Aspen. Cowboy Kitty and Natalia. Natalia is his sister-in-law who's in the process of being deported right now to Ukraine for a routine traffic stop. They claim that she had a violation of her work permit. She was driving a truck. She was here legally. She was going through the process, but apparently she had been granted asylum. We saw the asylum letter, but apparently that's not good enough for ICE. So she's being deported for not filing her paperwork on time. So here is the GoFundMe to support Natalia. We actually, on Giving Tuesday, we were able to thank you again. I mentioned earlier that once we had our bills covered for the year that I'd like to do some mutual aid for INN. And thankfully, INN was able to cover our bills for the year and make a couple of donations here. So we gave $50 this week to each one of these GoFundMes that I'm showing tonight. The third one is Aspen. And we did, again, the fundraiser for Aspen and Halo back at the end of October. I did a one-on-one with them in mid-October talking about their story, and we can't let up. Well, Sabby Sabs had her on November 30th. I think I mentioned it in our last show, but I wanted to bring a link to it as well. That did help push Aspen over the first goal. So excited to hear that she ended up getting over her $12,500 goal, made it by $2. Again, thanks to the Sent in Bloom and INN's donation contributions on Giving Tuesday. I think we helped get her there. And thank you to everybody, really, who's contributed. If you want to subscribe to Aspen's art or purchase a piece from her, you can shop her art at artspenstudio.com. Again, all these will be in the Substack at Indie Media Today afterwards with all the links from the show. We also have a link to her link tree all about her case and her story, including the Descent in Bloom article that was written after she got out of prison, and she had interviewed Aspen and Halo, found out their story, wrote this article, helped drive more donations and contributions. So again, I'm going to drop a link to Aspen's GoFundMe, and she could really use the help. So can Natalia, so can Shanda. Everybody's hurting right now. Everybody needs help. Thank you to everybody that does give something. It really is appreciated. This is what Indie News Now looks like for those of you who've never seen this website. Indie News Now, big banner at the top, IndieNewsNow.com, really easy to get to. 3 words, all one word. All right, and we've got videos from Actionable Truth and Actions and A Skeptic and Decensored News. All right, we've got videos, articles from Unicorn Riot and Israel-Palestine News and SheerPost and George Hazim. You'll discover independents that you may not have known because I put people into the RSS feed that I find on Substack and have vetted and found to be reliable and good journalists. A guy named Ted Gioia, who is the #1 jazz reporter or music reporter on Substack. He writes a jazz blog, but he also talks about and shitification and platforms. And I like what he has to say also. I like having a mix of independents. If you're independent, I want to hear what you have to say. Even Zay Squirrel published an article today to their Substack. I may bring that next week. The Zionist Gestapo that must be stopped through solidarity. I like that as a title. I want to read through it. And again, we might bring that next week, unless the guys decide to bring that tomorrow night. They're going to be live for INN News tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thursday night, I'm going to be doing a Nobody Wants to Work Anymore this week with Snow Himbo. So, and that'll be at 10 Eastern. Then Friday night, we've got Angel in the Afternoon at 7 Eastern. Pro Wrestling Talk is scheduled for Saturday night at 8 Eastern. Boats Smashing into Boats will go live at 11 Eastern on Sunday night. And then Tuesday night, we'll be back here. So look at that. 6 nights a week, you're getting a live stream. That's great. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Thank you for putting up with me ranting about all this nonsense. What do you think? Share the show. Tell people about it. Subscribe to Indie Media Today, and I'll be cutting up the clips from this and putting them out throughout the week at Indie Media Today. At my Indian INN YouTube channel, I put shorter versions. At the INN YouTube channel, I'll put longer clips. And again, like I said, as always, support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you, fam. And see you next week. No! We just fucking lost the stream. I'm going to leave this open so you can hang out and chat afterwards for a few minutes, by the way. I'm not going to end it as soon as the credits end. So you can hang out.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, 'cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, 'cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. Not here, but I'm not gone. Love, I know I'm right, so I won't waste time to deny my doubts. And I just wanna know what's on your mind, but the Wi-Fi's out. And I know you were born for the storm, but I just need a break in the clouds. Just a break in the clouds. She said it feels like another day.